Did you get the notification?
Not yet. Ah, there we
go. Okay, so today, before we get started, I kind of wanted to get an understanding of how much people know about GitHub here. There's no expectation to know anything about GitHub, but does anyone, maybe just by like a show of hands, have any of you used GitHub before? Have any of you heard about GitHub before? You've got two. Okay. Cool. So yeah, today we're just going to be giving kind of an intro to what GitHub does. There'll be a lot that we are not covering today that GitHub can do. So we're going to start with what GitHub is, what your command line is, how the team uses GitHub, and then we'll get into some like working with GitHub, and hopefully by the end of this you'll all feel a bit comfortable using it. Yeah, so please feel free to ask questions at any point during this like next hour. Getting started with GitHub can be a bit overwhelming. There's a lot of new ideas that some of you might not have might not be familiar with. And that also like extends beyond this session, whether you're working on QSET this year or I don't know, coursework and you have questions about GitHub, I'm always happy to answer them. I've been caught in some like GitHub confusion that has caused me a lot of mental pain, and I would be happy to alleviate that for you if you ever run into it. So yeah, any questions off the bat? There's two people have their hands up, and I'm not sure if that's from me asking people to raise their hands up or if you have a question. If you have a question, do you want to just speak up? If not, I'll keep going. Okay, so we'll start at a bit of a high level and then kind of work down from there. So on a high level, GitHub is a tool that QSET uses as well as many software companies and software developers to collaborate on code. And one of the questions I often get asked is, well, why don't we just use Google Docs? It seems a lot simpler than all this stuff we have to use GitHub. But I think that comes down to fundamentally code is different than writing text. If, let's say, Kate and I are working on a program and I remove a semicolon, all of a sudden it breaks for everyone. And it becomes very complicated when you have multiple people all trying to collaborate on a piece of software. So GitHub allows you to work on some code, do the changes you want to, and once you're happy with them, kind of send them back to your team that you're working on and not break anything. Yeah, you can get into a lot of trouble with GitHub, so we're going to hopefully go through this slowly so you know how to use it. To start off, I would like to give you an understanding of how the team uses it. So I'm going to go through the team's GitHub page, but I'll send a link in the chat if you want to explore it too. Okay, give me a moment. So you should now be looking at the QSET's GitHub page, mainly the satellite teams one. And this is where we store all of our repositories. And what a repository is you can think of it as a project to store code in. So let's take a look at the CanSBX repository. So it's the base folder that holds all of the code and various other things that we've used in the CanSBX project. You can click through and find the code. This is open for pretty much all the code I think's been written on the team is on GitHub. So if you're curious about what other subsystems are working on, all of this is public. It can take a bit to get used to the website of GitHub. Does anyone have any questions about this so far? The next thing I wanted to take a look at is the command line. So hopefully you guys were able to download that you have some sort of command line working. I recommended git bash, but I know other people have other preferences. Did anyone have any issues downloading your command line? It's often, so before we had the user interfaces we see on our computer, so like being able to use the mouse and like click on things, I guess, we had to use the command line to interact with our computer. And what that is it's a place that you can type commands to interact with your computer. So we're going to go through a couple examples of how to use it. And the reason that we need to know how to interact with our command line is because this is the way that we work with GitHub from our computers. I'm going to send a cheat sheet for general command line stuff, because I'm going to throw a lot of commands at you today and it may get a little confusing. So the first commands we're going to go through are some navigation ones, and then we'll move on to the GitHub commands. So right now, I'm in the base, my home directory, and if I want to see the contents of it, I can use the command ls to list everything that's in it. And to make this a bit more understandable, I'm going to mirror my file explorer. So if I want to go into a folder, I can use the command cd, which stands for change directory. You can think of directory being synonymous with folder. It's not like I never heard directory until I came to university, so if you're wondering about what that means, just think of it as folder. So I can use the command cd to change directories into, I don't know, let's say my documents folder. And then I can use ls to list everything in it. And it's kind of hard to see because it's so large, but everything that's here is what's in here. You can also, if you want to go back, you can use the command cd ... and that'll take you back a folder. You can also see that your path is represented by this line. Whoops. So why doesn't everyone open it up and see if they can try changing directories and getting back and like listing the files in it, and let me know if anyone has any questions or problems doing that. Well, everyone's potentially doing that. I remember when I was learning this, I was like, why would anyone ever want to do this? This seems like the dumbest thing ever. I'm just going to use my file explorer. And for some of you, that might be the case, but if you go into any software related job or field, you'll most likely have to use the terminal and become quite comfortable with it. So if you can get kind of your head wrapped around some of the basic ways to navigate with it now, it can become quite useful in the future. And right now we're just changing directories and looking at them, which seems rather trivial, but you can run much more complex commands that could save you a lot of time compared to what it would take you to do it using the graphical user interface.
I'll also jump in and say, even if you're not going into software, it's really handy to know how to use the command line for stuff like using a Raspberry Pi. Like, I'm not in software, but I had to use the command line to like just move around on a Raspberry Pi because I like couldn't connect a monitor to a mouse to my Raspberry Pi. So it's just like a handy skill to have in your back pocket in general.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're using like a Raspberry Pi, that's definitely a place you could use it on the team. And just general good knowledge. You like, Okay. Hopefully you guys have like played around with a little bit. I'm going to give you a bit of a cheat that you can use if you're desperate to get it to like find a path and you don't have the time or patience to do it. If you want to open, I don't know, something that's like way like many directories into your computer, you can right click and do open bash here, and then it will have opened your terminal to that place, and you can see it's kind of small, but your path is to where you are here. And that can save you a lot of time instead of doing like CD and doing the directory name, CD, doing the directory name. Another helpful tip is being able to use the tab key. Instead of writing out documents, if you just do the first like couple letters and hit tab, it'll complete the rest, which can also save you a lot of time. Any questions before we move on? Okay, so now we're going to kind of look at an example of a situation that you'd be using GitHub in and how you're going to kind of put all this together, because right now I feel like we've been all over the place. So for the purposes of the rest of this, I guess tutorial, I don't know what you want to call it, we're going to be using a repository that is on my personal account called the OBC repository. This is not the OBC repository. This is just like an example one that we're going to be using today. So if you all want to go over there now, that would be great. There are more people in this session than sent me your GitHub username. So if you've yet to do so, just send it to me now, and then I can add you as a contributor on this repository. And for those of you that did send it to me, you'll have to accept my request to be a collaborator. And that essentially means that not anyone can just come on and start modifying this. Only people I want to can modify it. So for the purposes of today, we're going to pretend that this is the OBC repository, and we're going to walk through, I'm first going to walk through an example of how I would make a change to this, and then I have a bunch of little tasks that I was going to assign to you all so that you can also do it, and then we'll hang out and work through all, hopefully minimal problems, but I'm assuming there'll be a couple things we need to figure out for you guys to all be working on it. So we're going to pretend Jake, another quick like aside that I didn't learn when I was in first year is what a README file is. Most repositories will have a readme.md file, which is a markdown file that will contain a brief summary of what is within the repository. And for the purposes of today, we're going to assume Jake, the OBC manager, tasked me with making a change to this file. So right now, this is all hosted on GitHub, and you'll often use the term remote to talk about code that's on GitHub, like the website, for lack of a better term. And the first step in doing that is getting the contents of this repository on my personal computer so that I can work with it. And the way that we do that is we clone the repository. So we'll do this part together, but what you're going to want to do is go to this code button here and copy the link to this repository. And go to second here. Go to your command line, and we're going to take a copy of the code that's online and have it on your computer. And so the command that we use to do this is, okay, first of all, when we run this command, what it's going to do is it's going to put a folder named OBC wherever you currently are in your computer. So the first step is to make sure that you are in a place, like a directory on your computer that you want this folder to be in. So maybe you have a QSET folder on it. If not, you could make one. So in order to make one, you can either make it using new folder, or you can do make dir, which stands for make directory, like a QSET directory. To prove to you that this works, here it is. And then what I'll do is the command git clone and the URL. And what that'll do is clone your repository, and once you're done, oh, I made a mistake. I did not go into my folder that I made. So I can use the cd command to get there and run it again. And now we see the OBC folder is now there. So I'm going to give you guys a moment to do that. Let me know if you have any questions. Another useful tip is you can use the up arrows on your computer to see the last commands that you wrote. So if you make a spelling mistake, instead of having to retype the whole thing, you can just hit the up arrow. Another issue that you might run into is if you try to use like Control-C, Control-V in the command line, it won't work. You'll have to like right-click and hit paste. If you try to do that, it'll just, yeah. How's everyone doing? Does anyone need a bit more time to clone the repository? Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So if we go into this folder, everything that we saw on GitHub is here. So we're going to modify the README file. It's taking a long time to open. You can open this with just like a plain text editor or anything you want if you have Atom, VS Code. I'll just open it in Notepad. Okay. Whoa. So here's the file. So the first thing, well, I guess not the first. Another thing in GitHub that's a core concept of it is branches. And that's the idea that there's always going to be a working copy of your code or your repository on GitHub in what we call the master branch. And when I want to work on the code, I'm saying code, but I know we're just editing a text file. I don't want to affect what other people have done until I'm very happy with the changes that I have made. So in order to protect myself and protect the code, we make what's called a branch. And you can think of it as making a kind of like a copy of the code in the repository for me to play around with. So I could make a branch, I could delete everything in my branch and everyone would still be safe because there's still the code in master. So I would, yeah, most people use branches. If you're working by yourself, you might not, if you're not too concerned about messing up your own code. But to make a branch, you use the command git branch and the name of your branch. This can be if you're working on a specific feature, or for today, I'm just going to call it I'm a dev. Oh, you need to go into your repository folder. And you'll see here that you're in like the master branch right now. We'll look at a graphic of this in a second, and I think it might make a bit more sense. So to make a branch, you do git branch. You can use the up arrows to get your old command. You run it. And then you need to go into your branch with the command git checkout and then the name of your branch. You can see that what branch you're in by this blue text at the end of your line there. Why doesn't everyone try making a branch while we're here, so we can kind of do it together? And then once I kind of assign you your tasks, then it's already set up. I'll also throw a GitHub cheat sheet in the chat too. Does anyone need a bit more time to make a branch and make sure that you've gotten into your branch?
I'm having trouble finding the Git repository.
Okay. I sent a link. The last link that I sent should be the repository. And when you open it, it should look like this. And then you're going to go to the code button and grab that. I'll just throw that is the command that you want to run. Let me know if that works.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Okay, so does anyone need more time or have any questions? Okay. So now that I'm in my branch, I can essentially do whatever I want and no one else will be affected. But for today, let's say I want to update what my favorite color is to be blue. Once you've done the changes that you want and you're happy with them, it takes a couple steps before we have these changes that are on our local computer to be on GitHub. And I will send these all in the chat because they're not overly intuitive. Make sure you save your file in order to have if you don't save it, your changes won't be there. The first command that isn't necessary but I find useful is git status. And what that does is it shows you which files have been modified. So here I can see that I modified the README. The next thing that, let's make this a bit bigger, you want to do is you need to add your files to the staging area. And the reason you need to add your files is because it's possible that you modified 10 different files, but you only want to send the changes on 2 of them, so that the staging area is what allows you to determine what files you want to be sent to GitHub. So in order to do that, you do git add and then the name of your file. And if you go back and run git status, you'll now see that it's green, which indicates that it has been added to the staging area. Once that's been done, the next command that you need to run is git commit. And with each commit, you have to write a commit message. And the reason that you do this is it allows you to tell the other people that you're working with what changes you've done. oftentimes when you're editing code, it's not super clear what you've changed. You might see a bunch of lines, but it's not necessarily intuitive that you've added some new features. So this gives you the ability to do that. Today I change favorite color. It might seem annoying when you're doing it, but if you ever run into an issue where things get super messed up on your GitHub, it's very helpful to have descriptive commit messages so you have an idea of what happened. And the last thing we want to do is what we call git push, and that takes the changes you have on your computer and sends them off to GitHub. That you just hit git push. Each time you create a new branch, you'll have to run this command, and it'll just give it to you. And for today, we won't just accept you need to run the command, and it'll be happy. Wonderful. So now we're back to the OBC repository on GitHub, and you'll notice that my color is still purple. And that is because right now we're looking at a copy of the master branch. And my changes were made in my Emma branch, so they shouldn't be on master, but if I want to view my changes, I can go to my branch. I think I have multiple. Oops. And now I can see that in my branch, it says that my favorite color is blue. Eventually, once we're all happy with the changes, we'll want this to be reflected in the master branch, because the master branch is your working branch, and that's where you eventually want all your changes to end up in. So in order to take your changes from your branch and to merge them into the master branch, you do what's called a pull request. So here, okay. On the top here, you have all these tabs. You'll go to the pull request tab. New pull request. I want to take the changes that were made in my branch and put them into the master branch. You can see here the commit that I did. You can see the change that I made to the code. Create pull request. Oftentimes your pull request will be made up of many commits, so it's helpful here to write a description of what the changes in this pull request are accomplishing. Here it's trivial, it's not super, I'm not going to write anything right now, but then once you hit pull request, then there, it's created. And the reason we have pull requests is it allows other people to look at your code. So what I can do is I can ask people to review the changes that I've made before they get put into master. I might have code that's working on my branch, but I could have unintentionally affected someone else's code in a way that shouldn't be done. So that gives people the opportunity to review the changes you've made. It's also an opportunity for someone else to give you feedback on your code, whether that be showing you a more efficient way you could have done it or fixing a spelling mistake in one of your comments. Yeah, I'm not going to have anyone review this change. And once you're happy with it, you can merge your pull request. And now if we go back to the code and look in master, my favorite color is now blue, which is what we wanted. The network graph is something I find incredibly useful if you're trying to visualize what the heck just happened. In the Insights tab here, if you go to Network, you can see this graph, and this shows all of the branches that have been on this repository. So what I just did was this. I created this black branch here is the master branch. I created a branch off of it. I made one commit, and then I merged it back into master. This example is pretty trivial, so if more likely you'd be working on a bigger feature with multiple commits. All these I think are just one. But if for any reason you like merge something into the wrong place and you like make a double branch and you're super confused as to what happened, I find this to be a useful place to come to visualize what is happening. Okay, that was a lot of information, a lot of commands. Does anyone have any questions? Want me to go over anything again? Have any concerns?
I do have one question. Is because I'm using GitHub and for my own course project, I can do Git push like without any like additional contents after the Git push but in here like I attempted to make a modification to the readme.md in your repo, and I was access denied. I'm saying like is that require for like if I want to make modification to a repo, I need to be a contributor. Then after that, I could do that.
Yeah,
Any
exactly.
modification.
So everyone, I forgot to mention that. Everyone who sent me their GitHub usernames, I added as collaborators to this repository. You will have to accept the request. Typically, if you click on this bell, you can accept it there, or you should have gotten an email. I see a couple people have accepted it, a couple people have yet to do so. But in order to make any changes to this repository, you need to be added as a collaborator.
Then that brings me to another question. Like if I want to contribute to any like open project on GitHub, if for example like I found a spelling error in their document and I want to fix that after I made the modification and I have a pull request being open, is that necessarily like I initial push request need like require me to be a collaborator then or not? I'm totally free to like initial pull request even if I'm not a collaborator then.
Are you asking in order to modify, like you could clone this onto your computer and do whatever you want? I'm fairly certain you can clone this onto your computer and do whatever you want with it, but you can't submit changes to here unless I allow you to do that.
Okay.
If you tried to delete it all and like delete everything in master and you weren't a collaborator, you couldn't do that.
Okay, got that. Perfect.
Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
So what I was hoping we could do now is there's a lot more than 5 people here, so we can double up on these, but I made a bunch of issues in the issue tab that are ideas of how you could modify the OBC repository. And what I was hoping is that each of you could pick one to work on and try to go through the steps that I just went through to accomplish what the issue is saying to do. An example, I try to make them pretty straightforward. This one is in the hello world.c file, change the hello Emma to print your name. Just a bunch of things like that. I'd made them so that we're not going to run into merge conflicts, which I'll touch on quickly. If you're not careful and you're modifying the same code as someone else or the same lines, GitHub might not know which ones to use. So you'll get a merge conflict and you'll have to manually go through and pick which lines you want to include. They're frustrating, so an easy way to avoid that is making like small commits and small pull requests. You're not trying to like all of a sudden add hundreds of lines of code. And the other thing that I did not mention was when someone's made changes, let's say Kate made changes and she pushed them up to GitHub, they don't automatically like come down onto my computer. I need to pull them down. So the command you use to do that is git pull. Right now it should tell me nothing's really happened, but if you haven't done this in a while and you do a git pull, you'll see all the changes that people have made since you last did a git pull, and doing that will also help avoid merge conflicts. Okay, so the three bottom issues here are pretty straightforward. They just involve editing a text file, or the one is the C file. I had one example. If anyone here feels a bit more competent in their programming abilities, I've added a C file that has an error in it. So what you could try to do is run the file, find the error, and then submit, like push the changes that fix the error. It's very easy, but that gives you a bit more of a understanding of what this would look like in reality, because you'll be working on code, most likely. I only think one person should take a look at this, or else we'll get a merge conflict, but one person should do this. Only one person should do this, but the other three, like anyone can add their name to the README. So why doesn't, if anyone really wants this bug one, because I don't really want it, I'll give it to you. Okay, cool. If not,
I do it.
okay, awesome. I know we have, you might yell at me, Kate. We have like the issue board in Teams that we use, and we don't typically use issues on GitHub, but if you're working on a personal project, you can track issues that have happened, and then you can assign them.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to using issues on GitHub. I think that like for code related stuff, they are really helpful. So
For some reason it won't. Here we go. Cool, it's been assigned. It's nice too, because then you know who's working on what. You can help track things. Okay. If you don't know what to do, I would suggest trying to add your name to the README. So I'll throw all the commands I just said into the chat. So make sure you've cloned the repository, then make a branch. Should have wrote this before. Okay, I think those are the steps. If you're just using GitHub for the first time, there's some weird stuff that might happen where it asks you to like put in your email and password. If you run into any of that, and it's not straightforward or it has any weird behavior, let me know and we can work through that together.
Oh, if I didn't send you my username, can I just throw that in the chat, or where do you want that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
Another thing that GitHub's great for is if you're applying to a job, your GitHub portfolio can act as a portfolio of the code that you've worked on. So having code on your GitHub is always beneficial. And I'm not saying this, but a lot of my projects in computer engineering are on my GitHub. So if you were looking for them, I'm not saying where you could find them, but just a thought. I feel like that's kind of cheating, but you'd be surprised at how many software projects you can find on people's GitHubs. Don't copy them because sometimes you'll get caught, but if you're looking for inspiration, yeah. When you're like the last, there you go. Yeah, when you're done, submit a pull request, and then we can add all your changes to the repository. And then in terms of getting added to the QSET one, I'm gonna let like the managers do that. I believe everyone should have access to the repository now. If you don't, please let me know. Just remember you'll have to accept it before you're allowed to collaborate on it. Jacob, I like your Manji quote. And as for your question, Jacob, you'll just have to run the commit git push set upstream origin Jacob dev, and that's just something you have to do each time you create a new branch. Yeah, no worries. And like I said, it takes a while to understand this and get comfortable with it. So if you have any questions for QSET, coursework, internships, feel free to message me. Yeah. I want everyone to love GitHub as much as I do. How's everyone doing?
Every time I try and like git push, it makes me like sign in through my browser, and then the sign in is successful, and then it just says permission denied, like fatal.
Okay. Try. Give me 1 second. There are some configuration settings you can set up. And I already have them set up, so I was trying to remember, like, what did I have to do? But it was 4 years ago now. So I think I have. Let's try to run this. And then make username your username.
It like, well, like a while back I had to do that, and I just did it with my email instead of username, but
Okay. Yeah, then I was gonna. Then if you do it with your username as well, I think that should.
okay. Sounds good. I'll go do
If
that.
that doesn't work, let me know. And do that. And just. I think that should work. So I see, Alex, you made a pull request. Unfortunately, if you're looking at it, you probably see that it says merge conflicts.
I'm going to look at the, cause I'm trying to add in image the readme file, but I will taking a look at the pull request first. Then 1 moment.
Okay. With the if you want, we can take a look at that merge conflict more in detail. It's just hard because you have so many people working on it that, like, this is what happens if 2 people change the same line. Then GitHub gets confused. You have to manually go in and do it. If you want, I can resolve it, but it could be fun fun to do. Like, we could like share a screen and then kind of go through what that looks like if you want.
Still not too happy about me trying to
No?
git push over here.
Would you be able to share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
Have you accepted the request?
Oh, that's a very good point. Wow, look at
You go to
that.
the little bell. It should. The accept or decline should be there.
Here?
Sometimes it's weird and it'll go to your email. But I'm guessing typically that's what the 403 error comes from.
Sounds good. Oh, do that.
I'll be right back. I have to go grab my charger. Out of curiosity, what sub-team is everyone on here? What are you doing on QSET?
I'm on OBC.
Awesome.
I'm again working on OBC because last year I didn't do that much.
Payload.
Awesome.
What sub-team are you on?
I'm not really on a sub-team. I was on OBC in the past, but since I'm on internship, I'm helping out with space school, but that's kind of the extent of my involvement this year just because I'm not in Kingston. So
Emma was on OBC, meaning that she was the OBC manager last year.
okay, I'm seeing more pull requests. This is looking awesome. If your merge request button is green, feel free to merge your changes once you've done them. If you are working on an issue, a cool thing you can do is in your commit message or in your pull request description, you can write closes, like hashtag and the number of the issue. And then whenever that commit gets merged into master, it'll automatically close your issue for you. Not not necessary to know to be able to use GitHub, but it's kind of a fun little trick.
Should we delete the branch after, assuming everything went well?
Yeah, so that's a good like GitHub practice, is once you're done creating whatever you needed to do with your branch, if you don't intend on using it again, you can delete it, and you'll want to do that both locally and remotely. In order to do that, I'll send you the commands. I know it's 8, so if you want to go, feel free to go. If you want to keep talking about GitHub or keep working on your issue, feel free to stick around. I think I saw with 4 pull requests, which is amazing. Does anyone have any questions, and is anyone stuck?
How do we know what the branch name is? Is it like what we said, like Matthew Dev, or is it something else?
Exactly. So it'll be whatever you set it to be. Just make sure you merge your branch before you delete it.
Saying I can't delete that branch like from the command line, and then it's just saying checked out at the, and then just gives a file directory to where it is.
My guess is that you're in the branch currently. Like, does the little blue text at the end say that you're in your branch?
Yeah.
So you'll want to go into a different branch before deleting the branch that you're in. So you'll use the command git checkout, and then you can go into master.
Okay.
I don't know where people are at, or if this is common knowledge, but most, I'm really bad at this. Typically, if you're running into GitHub errors, it'll say at least what you should do in the little message it gives you, or if not, if you throw it into Stack Overflow, someone's already had this issue, and typically you can find the solution with a bit of digging. But then there are times where he'll spend a whole day trying to untangle some GitHub branch issue that you've concocted. You've got loops in it, and those aren't as fun.
So what does it mean for it to have not yet been merged to head? Because yeah, as far as I can tell on GitHub, like it's been merged to the like master thing. So
I would assume that what's happened is you've pushed your changes to GitHub, you've merged it on GitHub, but your computer like doesn't know that you've done that yet. So if you do a git pull, what that'll do is it'll take all the changes on GitHub and like bring them down to your computer. And if you try to do it again, it should be happy with it. If that doesn't work, let me know. Okay. Where are people at the moment?
I'm looking to add a picture to the README, but it's there's conflict unresolved that's not been resolved yet, so it's pending.
What number is your pull request?
Pull request number, what's that? Wait, 18? 18.
Okay. If you want, why don't you share your screen and we can go through what dealing with a merge request or a merge conflict looks like.
Sure. 1 second. I'm going to share screens. Oh my. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you seeing? I don't know which. Okay, this way. Yeah. Okay, great. So
what
now,
you're going to do is resolve conflicts, and what you can see is that in between the I don't know what that symbol's called, but you can see there's kind of like your name and a bunch of symbols, and then a bunch of equals, and then a bunch more of those symbols and master. And what that indicates is lines 19 to 20. GitHub doesn't know whether to take lines 19 to 23 or 23 to 27. By looking at it, you can infer that you probably want both because it looks like you both edited the same lines, but we want both of these changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but my concern is how should I preserve both changes now?
Exactly. So what you want to do is get rid of line 19, 23, and 27. All those lines. Yeah. Just no. Yeah. Okay.
Should I do that here, or I should done that in my brain?
You can do it on either one, but sometimes if it's a small one, doing it in like the GitHub website is fine.
Okay.
Just
like this, then
you can do it that way, but you can also just like individually delete 19, 23, and 27. Like just the one line.
Should that so something?
You'll need to delete line 23.
Like here?
Mm-hmm. Not 22. Like, you just, the lines that have those, does anyone know the name of those symbols?
Like those red.
I always call them alligator brackets.
Alligator, okay.
That's what they look like.
The CTO told me they were alligator brackets, and now
It's the technical term. I'm an
Okay,
expert.
Mark has resolved. It should be good for now.
So wait, before you need to commit the changes. Did you commit them?
Okay. Then
Um,
I
there's
resolved that.
still conflicts. So
Oh.
instead of copying and pasting them, which works sometimes, I would like, you can see that orange brackety thing, and then there's like little lines that stick out.
Mhm.
Where those lines stick out, those were inserted by GitHub to show where that code came from. So whether it came from your branch or the master branch,
Mhm.
you just delete those lines.
Like those.
Just the one. On, for example, on line 20,
20.
where it's alligator bracket, like all the, just, yeah, delete that line. And then delete the one below it.
This one.
Yeah. And then you'll also want to delete the ones that have the alligator brackets in master and all the equal signs. Okay, and now you can mark it as resolved. Merge.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, great.
So now you can click on merge pull request. Wonderful.
Perfect. Oh, yeah, that's not what I'm expecting, but somehow it works. It seems like it's the link issue, but that should be fine with that.
Yeah.
Wait. Oh, okay. Seems like it's oh yeah, great. Perfect.
Yeah, so I guess that was kind of a quick example of a merge conflict, but typically they're a lot more challenging to understand. So just make sure you do a poll before you make changes and just be mindful.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, how's everyone else doing? Any more questions? If you're done and you have no questions, feel free to go, but I'll keep hanging out until everyone's happy with GitHub.
You mind if I share my screen super quick?
Yeah, of course.
I don't think my command line is super thrilled with me.
Did you get...
Like I had like that issue up here, so when I switched to master, and then I tried to delete, and it gave me this warning that it hadn't merged to head. So when I did the pull,
Yes.
and then now it's not letting me. It's just saying it's not found.
My guess is that you deleted your branch on your computer, and then you pulled the changes that were on GitHub. Sometimes when you do it in a weird order, you get errors, but I'm going to quickly... give me one more second.
Yeah, of course.
Can you try git pulling again? Control C. And then try again. Then hit the up arrow to try to delete your branch.
No, that's not that one. It's this one.
You'll need to remove the double quotes around.
Yeah. Well, I tried that at the start. It didn't seem to make a difference in the error message.
Are you sure? Can you do git branch -a?
Yikes.
It's kind of small, but it looks like you spelt it correctly. Error branch. Try git push. Just okay, good. Can you try to check out into that branch? So git checkout, Matthew Dev. If you use tab, it should autocomplete. Okay, I want to check. Seems odd to me.
Okay, I'm gonna head out. Thank you, Emma.
See you, Kate.
And this doesn't seem to be the most important issue if you have other things to do. I mean,
What I was just looking at is all the branches that were on GitHub, and I don't see your branch there. Is it possible you ran the commands? Did you run git push origin delete branch name?
I thought so.
Okay, what I think what's happened is you've deleted the branch, but then you're trying to pull change, like you've just confused GitHub. For like try once more git branch slash -d your branch name. Try -f too.
Now
Like
D first or F?
Both. With a space in between. Sorry. Wasn't your branch called Matthew Dev?
Yeah, I'm being an idiot.
Sorry, can you check out into master? And then hit the up arrow twice. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So what happened there is I think you just deleted them in a weird order and then tried to pull changes that had to do with the branch, but it had deleted the branch and just got really confused. Typically, when you're using the command line, you can use the -f to force something to happen.
Okay.
So yeah, I checked on GitHub. I didn't see that it was there, but it was still on your computer. We know we wanted to delete it, so we just forced it to delete, and now we're happy.
Yeah.
Only use it if you feel pretty confident about what you're doing, because typically when you use that, then you can't undo things.
Yeah. Dash
But yeah,
S kind of
that
like
was kind of a
last
weird
resort.
situation, but
Fair enough. Okay. Well, this is super helpful. Thank you.
yeah, no worries. That's the thing, like if you run into that on your own, you're like, this wasn't in the GitHub tutorial. Like it's hard because you kind of have to like weirdly create these situations for yourself. Like it's not standard to happen. So if you have any more like that while you're
Yeah.
on QSET, feel free to send me a message.
Well, like I think what I'm doing so far with QSET is pretty rudimentary enough that it's not going to take a bunch of people collaborating on code to get this done. So, I mean, obviously GitHub's incredibly powerful, but just in terms of applications for it right now, I don't think I'm too stressed, but
Yeah, well, what type of engineering are you in?
I'm in comp.
Okay, so you'll have to use this eventually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I learned on QSET, and then we had to do a project in one of my classes in third year, and no one else on my team knew how to use GitHub. So for the first 3 weeks, they were all struggling with it, and it was super nice to not be.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely fair. I mean, it'd be nice to get familiar with it in a setting that's like not like super stressful in terms of
For
like
sure. Or like a
needing
job,
it. But yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I got some stuff to do, but thank you very much. This was super
Yeah.
helpful.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
You as well.